Hey, what's up, everybody? It's lunchtime, and I'm going to welcome you to another episode. We are excited to have episode 2 happening right now. And as always, joining me is our president of EPM, Phil Mancuso. Phil, how are you doing?
Yo, yo, how's it going, Frazier?
It's going great. And like I said, a lot of great feedback from episode 1. And we're excited to continue the series where we are all about real talk about the industry, sales, leadership, and everything in between, where we ask you the question, are you ready to eat loser's lunch? And with that, we have today's episode where we're going to be talking about living your life like there is no tomorrow. It's something that I believe is something that, Phil, you talk about quite a bit. But I want to get a little bit behind the scenes on that. You talk about that, and what's your mindset behind all of that?
I think it's several fold. Not the least of which was that I'd like to think I'm the world's biggest Van Halen fan, David Lee Roth. Although Sammy wasn't bad, so I'd be curious to see what folks side of the aisle folks land on when we get some feedback there. But we touched on it a little bit last episode and how such what many people would think, trivial words from a hard rock song in 1978, but really how profound they are and how they really transcend life and business. To me, I try to do everything to live my life like there's no tomorrow, but specifically in terms of business, hey, if I'm going to be working, it's really incumbent upon me to get the most out of it. I've found that what separates oftentimes the successful people from the unsuccessful or less successful people is how they use their time at work or while they're working. And, to have that mindset of leaving everything out on the proverbial court, to have that mindset of if I'm going to be here, and I had mentioned it last episode of if I'm not on a golf course, if I'm not on a desert island, if I'm not, with my family and so on and so forth, then I need to squeeze 110% out of these hours. So part of that mentality that I have in my approach to business just simply is time is my most precious commodity, and I've got to maximize it when I'm away from the ones I love. And all of this is really intertwined. So the other part of it is, and I don't call if I touched on it or not, but folks that know me know I lost my dad at a reasonably young age. And so just understanding how precious life is. We don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. And I just see so many people hung up on yesterday. And I'm huge on reflecting on yesterday. And that's also something is the difference between winners and losers is I find that winners use yesterday as a catalyst for tomorrow, and losers use yesterday as an excuse for tomorrow. And so all of that really just intertwines into, hey, we are going to go all in every moment of every day, live my life like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a quote, and I don't know who said it. I heard this years ago, and it's always stuck with me. To your point, is that make today count because this day will never ever happen again. Right? The day that you're living today will never happen again. Right? So make it count. Otherwise, it's never coming back. We're not, I like to say, none of us are getting out of here alive. Right? Like there's an end. We're here, I might like to say that I'm going to live forever, but being realistic, it's not going to happen.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. Hope beyond hope. But that's not the case. So it's a great mindset to have. And look, it's not a perfect mindset, but it can lead to perfection if you live it right, right? And whatever that means. And I think you touched on it, and we touched on it last week. Is that it's not about doing this for your boss or your company. It's about doing it for yourself and your family.
You have to find the why. Okay. Yeah. And, part of that process, and I want to talk a little bit about finding the why and what my inspiration was. But I want to say this. I had a guy work for me years and years and years ago, and I tell this story. His name was Pete Rosen. Super energetic guy. He had worked for Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins back in the day. And he said to me, and by the way, Still have construction here.
Like someone's trying to someone's trying to get to you, Phil.
Yeah, excuse the construction, but money never sleeps, as I said last week.
Yeah.
So Pete says to me, you got to listen to Tony Robbins. You got to listen to Brian Tracy. And, I'm whatever I was at that time, 22, 23 years old, already had been in the business 3, 4, 5 years, has had some, pretty reasonable success, particularly given that age. And I was like, dude, I'm pretty motivated. I'm a pretty big self-starter myself, as we like to say. I don't need any motivational tapes. And he just was on me and on me. I said, look, all right, I'll listen. And so here's what happened. And I think it's part of what's been my process that I just can't stress enough to those that are looking to level up, those who are just starting out, is, you always have to turn lemons into lemonade. Okay. Yep. I didn't want to listen to these audio tapes, and I listened, and I sort of got out of them what I somewhat expected, which I didn't feel any more motivated necessarily. But here's what I did do. I said to myself, wow, there's some profound knowledge in what I just heard. What was Tony Robbins trying to do? He was trying to move people to action, the action of getting up off of our asses and doing some work and making something of ourselves. I've already done that to some extent, but what can I learn from this? Well, what was sales? And that's what I was doing at the time as a loan officer. Sales is moving people to action. Okay. Yep. So if I understand the psychology of what Tony was saying, people want to be loved, accepted, and recognized. And we'll talk about that later and how to apply that to sales. But if you, I got to shut off my text alert. Sorry. There's Peter Griffin. If we talked about the application of moving people to action in sales, right? I was able early on in my career, use a moment that I did not want to participate in as a huge catalyst for my success. As soon as I started thinking in those terms, how do I move people to action? How do I resonate with people, make them feel loved, accepted, and recognized? I understood that I could facilitate moving people to action, actions that I thought were beneficial, and then therefore would be mutually beneficial for me. Because I always believe in believing in what you sell if you're in sales. Okay. So never sell something you don't believe in, you wouldn't use yourself, so on and so forth. Huge. That's again, a different episode. But getting back to, your point of the why. I had a couple of events, if I were to share. One was growing up, especially back in those days, I was like, sort of bigger than most. I was about 6'2", 235 to 250 in high school, played football, and I wanted to be a quarterback. I had an arm for being a quarterback. I had the mindset for being a quarterback, played quarterback in schoolyard ball all the time. And they looked at me and they're like, you're the nose tackle in the center. And, that put a real chip on my shoulder. I had been told many times, you can't. Not by my family, but by the outside world. That was a huge catalyst to wanting to prove the world wrong. I hate when people say you can't. My son, Nick, who plays college baseball, what does he want to do one day? Oh, he wants to play professional baseball. Oh, come on, get out of here. What does he really want to do? He was like, well, I don't know. 800 people do it in round numbers, right? Yep. If you look at us, we're only one of about 100 odd active Ginnie issuers, maybe less after the pandemic. So there's a longer shot that I'd be issuing government bonds, Ginnie Mae bonds, than it is for Nick to play professional baseball. So that was a huge motivating factor. And then my father passing away suddenly and unexpectedly. My motivation early on was to make him proud. He sacrificed so much for our family, and I just wanted to do nothing but make him proud. And that was my motivation early on. And I struggled a little bit when he passed because I'm like, well, what's my inspiration now? And, I got through it, and then my kids were born, and, they're my new inspiration, and really they're my why. It's always been family. And that motivates me beyond any outside influence. And certainly even motivates me beyond the chip on my shoulder. But when I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, I have the chip, and when I wake up with the sun shining, I have my family. Either way, I'm going to be a pretty inspired person.
Yeah. Good day, bad day, you're okay, right? That's just kind of how you right?
Hey, good day, bad day, you're okay. I love that.
But
Put that up.
We'll mark it up. We'll trademark it. But to your point, you mentioned, your dad, we share that in common. Lost my dad at a very young age, as Eddie, we have a lot of that in common with people at EPM. But look, everyone's parents die, but it's the common denominator of what happened because of that: the drive, the passion, finding your why, motivation, inspiration, whatever in between. That's what it was, right? And whether it's work or life or what have you. And obviously we're talking, this is a lot about business, and to your point is like, money never sleeps. You got to do what you got to do. And one thing that I've learned, like doing 75 hard, is conditions are never perfect. So you're talking about like notifications, you got, the construction work happening. It does not matter. It's like, if I wait for, conditions to be perfect, and we're in the mortgage industry where conditions are never perfect, you're not going to get anything done, right? And so, to that point, we're filming this on a Friday. Late, this will be coming out on Labor Day, right? So that's a little irony there. That again, the work and what we're talking about. But let's because it's Friday, let's talk about a little bit about the NFP. And not NFTs for all of you guys paying $100,000 for a stick figure. Not talking about the non-fungible tokens out there. We're talking about NFP. So for let's touch on that a little bit, Phil.
Yeah, non-farm payroll printed earlier this morning. I don't have it in front of me, but just off recollection, sort of the forecast was 700 odd thousand. There were even some whispers north of that. Number came in at 230 odd, something along. Huge miss. Wages were double what was expected. Expected 0.3, came in at 0.6. Off the top of my head, I forget what some of the other internals were. You're always looking for. So for those of you who are going to look at non-farm payroll, right? The internals, in my humble opinion, as important, if not more important than the headline. And I'm going to digress on that in a sec. But we're looking at hours worked, we're looking at U6, which for the uninitiated is really almost real employment. That includes people who aren't looking for a job. So it's like, if you're discouraged, how is that really any different than you not being able to get a job, right? So there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from the internals, forgetting about just the headline. So the number prints, first reaction was worse. Next reaction was better. Subsequent reaction worse. We're sitting worse right here. 10-year back above 130. What do I think about this report? I was talking to one of the broker dealers that I'm pretty friendly with earlier, and he was asking me about it, and what my thoughts were. And my answer was same old. This is what I've been saying now for, 20 years. Information and automation are wage and workforce killers and price killers, period. The sooner we figure that out, the better we can attack the problem. And I'm using air quotes because it's not a problem. It's the economy is not broken. It's different. It's evolved. And we just don't want to come to terms with that. We're maybe slowly starting to come to terms with that. And I've been screaming from the rooftops for 20 years, right? I said it on CNBC in August of 2005. The Fed's tightening, And they're going to wake up and they're going to say, what do we do here? Now we're talking about taper. They have to. Folks, there's going to be a taper. Unless something happens, there's going to be a taper. And what I believe happened today, here's my guess, my educated guess, is when you look at what inflation's been running, okay, ISM on Wednesday, prices paid, I believe we're about 79. It missed. But when you're 30 through equilibrium, prices are still running hot, okay, transitory or otherwise. So there's a price reason to talk taper. Now there's a wage reason to talk taper. Don't care how many jobs were created. So why did I say same old, same old? What's been happening now for 20 years? We get a lot of jobs, wages are here. We get no jobs, wages are here. Why? Because on a broad base, there aren't a ton of highly paid jobs out there. So when we create a lot of jobs, they're not highly paying. And that's why these numbers, we never see 1 million jobs and wages double what we're expected. Just never see it. So consequently, if you want to taper, and I believe that the Fed has their finger on the trigger, they have everything that they need to taper. Here's the good news, and I don't know that this is good news. In the longer run, today's number was great for interest rates and the mortgage industry. Why? Same old, same old. We're going to taper. Rates historically are not great from right about now through the middle of December. There's a lot that I could unpack there. We don't have enough time. We'll get down the line. We'll maybe talk a little bit more granularly about that. But rates will more than likely be rough between now, December 15th, give or take. This data will start to ease both seasonally and because some of this is transitory. And unless there's another COVID event, and that is the wild card, rates will ease a bit January, February. I think the next 12 to 18 months are going to be choppy. I've forecasted the next issue to be around Q3, Q4 25, Q1 26. This long-term, this report today, long-term tells me nothing has changed. Short-term gives Fed the ammo.
Gotcha. So as an originator, with that, is what should I be looking at if I'm pricing, if I'm thinking about floating, locking, whatever it happens to be with my consumers? What can I use what happened today as a somewhat of just a guide for how I'm approaching people, because they're going to get those questions, right? That's a question for everyone. Like, I'm waiting for it to go lower. What do you think rates are going to be doing, this or that? As far as their approach, when you say business as usual, should they be like, hey, whatever you're doing today, you're doing that tomorrow, you're doing that, whatever. Yeah. You shouldn't be changed, standing pat.
No, not from a lock standpoint, first of all. Second of all, I don't know what the individual is doing. So I can't tell you if you should do the same. Here's what I can say.
Yeah.
I have always had a short bias in the mortgage industry. What does that mean in layman's terms? Short means a bias to lock. In cap markets, for me, a bias to put a hedge on. And here's why I believe that that's the right position to take is if I'm speaking with you as a prospect and you're a home buyer, I know what you can afford. And in theory, we're going to try to maximize your spending ability. Not always. Some people want to be conservative. Most home buyers are like, well, how much can I buy? How much can I qualify for?
Yeah.
So if I'm maximizing your spending ability, why on God's green earth would either of us want to contemplate 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road? Oops, rates went up.
Yeah.
If I'm refinancing you, and I know that I'm taking you from 4 to 3, and we agree, this makes sense. Who cares about 2 3/4?
Yeah.
We have to get out of that mentality, folks. Okay. Here's why. And this is what I used to say. And I was almost 100% lock at application. Now, I also want to say this for all the cap markets folks out there. Can we please stop with I locked the rate. The rates went down. I'm going to take the loan somewhere else or ask for a float down. There's no backsies really. Okay. Let's make an informed decision and let's do the right thing across the board. Here was my pitch in those scenarios. Are you comfortable with the payment? Are you saving enough money? Are you buying the house you want? Whatever the scenario was, let's lock in. If rates go down, okay, they're going to go down again. Our average loan stays on the books 3-4 years. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to refinance. We're not talking about life or death money here. We've already agreed that you're happy with what we have. If rates go down at a future date, I'll refinance you. Shockingly, I make money if I refinance you. See, I could be transparent here. We're afraid to tell the truth in this society. We're afraid to tell the truth as salespeople.
Yeah.
Jason Frazier, if I do 5 loans for you, I will make money 5 times. I will call you the moment you can refinance. You can bank on that.
Yeah.
Not for you, for me. And then I get what you just did. But some, behind the scenes are saying, holy cow, no one's ever said that to me. They're all, let me, I'm going to do your loan. Let's go. Give me the money. It's like, that's really honest and transparent. And I can be that because I'm willing to eat loser's lunch. I'm ready to eat loser's lunch. If you don't want to hear that from me, Jason, and you go to somebody else, so be it. I can't be all things to all people. I can't make every sale. I can only be me. If I'm me, if I believe in what I'm doing, if I'm prepared, Gary Player, the more I practice, the luckier I get. Yes. If I'm prepared, I'm not going to make 100% of the sales. I've got to be me. I've got to say to you, and I don't know if we touched on this last time, but I've said this publicly. When we were doing our call center way back when, we wouldn't answer the phone. How can I help you? I'm lending you money. I'm not subservient to anyone in this scenario. How can I, it would be, how are you today? I'm sorry, not how can I help you? How are you today? And be like, well, I'm fine. How are you? Well, because I was prepared, and today is a great example of that, I'm great. Everybody's calling me to lock in because non-farm payroll missed, but the market's, off kilter. Here's why I think that's happening. And I suppose that's why you're calling too. What's the person going to say? No? Because either A, that's why they're calling, or B, they're now saying, you're right. That is why I'm calling. Maybe I should lock in. And no one else is talking to me about non-farm payroll and why they think that the market got it right or got it wrong. They're just quoting me a rate, quoting me fees, and saying, what do you think? Be different. Differentiate yourself from everyone else by being informed, by being passionate, by being yourself, by being invested, by being all in, by living your life like there's no tomorrow, by finding the why, by being willing to share. I can't emphasize this enough. And I also have told this story before. Now this is going to be a little off color, right? And I would not recommend literally saying what Victor would say, but this loan officer who's not with us any longer, God rest his soul, his name was Victor Anafrieto. And before he got into the mortgage business, he had an insurance business out in California, very successful. Okay. And he specialized in low FICO borrowers. And his approach was hardcore, like old school subprime. And he'd have somebody on the phone and he'd be consolidating a ton of debt and their credit would be banged up a little bit. And sometimes the borrower would push back, but no, but I want 0% and whatever. And Victor would be like, bro, you're a piece of shit. Bleep that maybe. Yeah. But that's okay because I was too. Let me tell you my story. I had a thriving insurance business, living in the hills of Southern California, driving my Porsche on the outskirts of the beach, whatever that is, the Southern Pacific Highway, whatever, and then I lost it all. At 40 years old, I was living in my parents' basement. This is what I did to get my life back on track. I'm going to do that for you. Work with me. This is step one. Step two is we're going to get you out of this terrible. It's a terrible loan I'm putting you in. The rate's awful, admittedly. These are the lumps you have to take for the choices that you made previously. You have my word. This isn't the end if you walk lockstep with me on the road to recovery. Been there, done that myself. You and I, we're shoulder to shoulder on this. Again, there's something profound about this. We're all in this together. You take your problems, you think you have problems, you throw your problems in the middle of the room, you probably take your own back. You think that you're better than somebody? You know, I joke all the time, like Bill Gates wakes up with Oprah Winfrey money, he kills himself. You know, and Oprah Winfrey thinks she's great, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all in this together. Find that commonality. You're not above anybody. You're not below anybody. We all have our own challenges and aspirations. What's incumbent upon you is to overcome your challenges. Don't use them as an excuse. Use them as a catalyst. And then use that to help others.
Yeah, it's great, and I want to go back a little bit to what you said as we kind of wind up here and get into a little bit of what next week's episode is going to be about. But the reason why I said that and asked is because I was hoping you were going to go where you went, and you were talking about, are you happy with the payment? Are you happy with this? This is one thing why I mentioned what I mentioned before that I learned in 75 Hard. It isn't a 75 Hard thing, but it's something that made me think about it more than what I should or than I did before. And that is conditions are never perfect. Guess what? What Phil just said, those conditions are never perfect. Those borrowers' conditions are never perfect. The market will never be, there is no perfection. It is today, right? Focusing on what it is today, what you can do today. Everyone else that's waiting for this or this and all these other things to come together for that one person, it's never going to happen, right? It's to the today. Are you comfortable? Are you good? Then the conditions are great for that moment in time. And that's when you pull the trigger on whatever it happens to be what you're doing, whether it's work, whether it's life, anything else. So I'm glad that you went where I was hoping you were going to go about that, because I think we overthink it a lot too much. And also we never factor in the cost of waiting, right? Yeah, maybe that perfect moment does come, but what did you miss for the last 60 days waiting for that perfect moment, right? And so it's something we never talk about, but this is why this is real talk. This is why we're going into it. But to get to wrap up a little bit, I want to talk a little bit where we're going next week, and that is with. Okay,
not to interrupt you, I just want to really hammer this point home, okay? While they vacuum outside my office door. And I'm going to do this is for you, Mike Alasso, my life coach, who saw last week's episode and says, you need to pause and all this other stuff. Holy mackerel, now they're drilling. I love this quote by Lou Corallo, who's like a strength and conditioning coach for Georgia Tech. Lazy people do a little work and think they should be winning. But winners work as hard as possible and still worry about being lazy. Frazier, your excuses are your own.
Yep.
To your point, your excuses are your own. Okay? Your mentality is your own.
Yep.
What your company's rates are, what your turn times are, what non-farm payroll did, excuse.
Yeah. And before we get into the last point, I will say off of that, this is what I will say. When rates were 16% and 12% and 11%, guess what? People were still buying houses. Mortgages were still happening. Business always happens regardless of the market conditions. It's just a matter of who's doing that business, right? And that's really up to you. And so talking about everything that we talked about today, what we wanted to, because it's a big hot topic that I hear quite a bit, Facebook groups, and what people are asking all the time, CNBC is covering it now, is are we in a bubble, right? A lot of different opinions, a lot of that, and that's something that we're going to talk about next week, but take us out with that, Phil.
Absolutely. Can you hear me, by the way?
I can.
Okay. So tiny bubbles. Next week's episode, right?
Yeah.
Dovetails into this because a huge part of navigating the bubbles is preparation.
Yep.
So I just want to make that point again is how do you navigate bubbles? You got to be informed and prepared to be able to speak intelligently about the bubble, to navigate your borrowers through the bubble. Do I lock? Do I float? That sort of stuff. Are we in a bubble? Okay. Yes and no. I believe that there are bubbles geographically. Down here in Florida, absolute bubble. We bought a house here in November. The house we bought was on the market for, I think, 2.5 years. Now every house that gets sold in this community is a pocket listing.
Yeah.
An over ask.
Yeah.
I paid less than the previous two borrowers, the owners paid for this house. Okay. So if that's not a bubble, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
All right. But elsewhere, not necessarily. Same old, same old. So what I would say is this: mortgage people, beware. This housing appreciation that we're seeing, that's the catalyst for my concern in 2025, 2026. We're estimating that home builders catch up 2024-ish. Once home builders catch up, we have the same supply-demand imbalance that we had mid-2000s. Housing prices start to come down. We already know that we're capable of the financial anarchy that we were capable of in 2008.
Yeah.
I want to cite a statistic. One of the largest banks in the country told me in 2008, in the depths of 2008, it's probably 2009 at that point, early, mid 2009. But when I say I call the financial crisis 2008, 70% of their delinquencies were coming from borrowers who still qualified for the loan. They may have had an event, but they still qualified for the loan.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I asked this question. What's going to happen in 2025, 2026 when we have homeowners who are underwater?
Yeah. So good thing to ask, and we'll get more in depth in that next week. This has been another great episode, a lot of great content, a lot of stuff for you guys to think about. This isn't just about, just the normal stuff. This is, and that's why we set it up last week, is just like, this is going to be a different type of information that you're going to get to help you do the best you can and be in the best position, not just to succeed for yourself, but for your family, and of course for your customers. So with that, this is another episode of Losers Lunch, and
live.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot.
Live.
Yeah. So this will be the last recording, and then the week after, we're actually going to be going live on Facebook and LinkedIn, where we're going to be talking about this, and it's and we will be taking questions. Q&A. Oh, that's right. Forgot Q&A. Man, I totally missed all of that stuff. Right?
What are you doing?
What am I doing?
You're no Pat Sajak.
So I may not be back.
Pat Sajak's game show host. We're going to have a new host next time on September 13th, folks. No.
I may not be back, guys. This may be my last one. No, but no. Again, this is why we're different, right? We like to have fun, and the conditions are never perfect. Find your why. Remember that. Find your why. Conditions are never perfect. Live every day as if it was your last. Have a great week, and we'll see you guys next week live.
See everybody, and work on Labor Day. There is no work-life balance. Get a couple minutes in.
Take care.
Have a great holiday, everyone.